Yang Amat Berhormat Dato Hafiz Ghazi, Menteri Besar of Johor, NUSS President, NUSS Management Committee members, distinguished guests, NUSS members and guests, a very good evening and a very warm welcome to NUSS 70th Anniversary Lecture. My name is Brent, and I'm delighted to take you through the event this evening. Before we kickstart tonight's lecture, let us welcome NUSS President, Mr. Tong Sian Hui, for his opening address. Mr. Tong, please.
Oh, the gentleman very tall. Yang Amat Berhormat Dato Hafiz Ghazi, Menteri Besar of Johor, Mr. Puat Mata, NUS Pro-Chancellor, Mr. Ong Keng Yong, Singapore's Ambassador at Large and NUSS Distinguished Member, His Excellency Ambassador Sok, NUSS past presidents and outstanding members, distinguished guests, fellow NUSS members, ladies and gentlemen. A very good evening and welcome to the NUSS 70th Anniversary Lecture. Tonight, we are honored to have with us Dato Menteri Besar of Johor, as the distinguished speaker for the NUSS lecture. His presence is particularly significant not only as we celebrate our 70th anniversary, but this is also the year where we celebrate the centennial of the Johor Causeway, a lasting symbol of the enduring bond between Singapore and Johor. Dato has had a distinguished career in politics, business, and community development. He served as a member of the Johor State Legislative Assembly for Layang Layang from 2018 to 2022, and currently is a member of the Johor State Legislative Assembly for Machap. He has made notable contributions and achievements throughout his career. For example, as the Johor State Executive Councillor for Tourism, Youth and Sports during the extremely challenging COVID period, he established and led the Southern Volunteers Program, which mobilized over 20,000 youths to register and assist almost 500,000 Johorians for vaccination. Recognizing the importance of digital entrepreneurship, he initiated online entrepreneurship workshops to train and support young Johorian entrepreneurs. We look forward to his insights and the future of Johor-Singapore relations and the potential of the Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, which promises to deepen regional cooperation and strengthen ties between our two nations. The NUSS lecture has long served as a platform for thought leaders, facilitating conversations that shape national and regional discourse. This tradition started back in 1991 with Mr. George Yeo, who was Acting Minister for Information and the Arts at the time, and has continued through the years with many distinguished guests, including Senior Minister Lee Hsien Loong, who graced our 50th and 60th anniversary lectures. Tonight's event is a continuation of that legacy, providing a platform for critical reflections on our shared future. As Singapore's largest graduate alumni society, NUSS is home to 15,000 members, offering not only networking opportunities and premium facilities across 3 guild houses, but also fostering intellectual growth through lectures, dialogues, in support of our mission, which is to promote the interests of the National University of Singapore, while also contributing to the broader social and cultural fabric of our society. This year marks a monumental year for NUSS, as we celebrate our 70th anniversary through a series of events that reflect the full breadth of our society's mission. We kicked off our celebrations earlier this year through a Plant It Forward challenge, where for every $1,000 donation, a tree was planted, and during that particular exercise, we raised $70,000 for the NUSS Bursary Fund. A few weeks ago, the NUSS Charity Golf Tournament raised $777,000 for the NUSS Bursary Fund, and this fund is meant to support students from lower income backgrounds in their pursuit of higher education, a testament of our long-standing commitment to social equity and education. In November, Madam Halima Yaakob will be the guest speaker at our commentary dialogue, together with editor Dr. Gillian Koh. For those of you who may not know it, the commentary is Singapore's oldest academic journal, and was first published in 1968. At the end of the year, our celebrations will conclude with the NUSS Day to be held at the Kent Ridge Guildhouse and graced by Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat as guest of honor. This festive extravaganza will feature activities and games for all ages, along with great food, and will again serve to reinforce the bonds of friendship and community that we have built over the years. As we commemorate this milestone year, let us not only reflect on our proud history, but also embrace the future with a sense of unity and purpose. NUSS will continue to be a place where meaningful connections are forged, ideas are exchanged, and legacies are built, much like the enduring bond between Singapore and Johor. Before I end, I'd like to thank Mr. Soh Yi, Chairman of the Intellectual Pursuit Subcommittee, who together with his committee and the Secretariat have worked tirelessly to put this event together. I wish you all a pleasant evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tong. Tonight, it is our pleasure to have with us Dato On, who will share with us Johor's vision for the state, the transformative potential of the upcoming Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone in realizing the shared aspirations of both countries, and how it will be a game changer in taking our bilateral relations to greater height. Without further ado, please put your hands together to welcome Dato Ons on stage for his presentation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. A very good evening, everyone. Mr. Tong Sen Hui, National University of Singapore Society President. Mr. Fuad bin Sheikh, Pro-Chancellor of the National University of Singapore. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to thank the NUSS for graciously inviting me to be a part of your 70th anniversary. It is truly a great honor for me to address this distinguished gathering of NUS alumni, although I see a lot of my seniors here. I must also thank the organizers, because this provides me a momentary escape from the by-elections that's happening in Kluang at the moment. But considering the caliber of NUS alumni, I am sure there will be some tough questions for me tonight. But seriously, I always relish the chance to be in Singapore, and I look forward to the dialogue later. Ladies and gentlemen, you have asked me to deliver a lecture titled Johor and Singapore, Celebrating Our Shared History and Redefining Our Common Future. This is apt because just as Malaysia and Singapore was one country, so too does the NUS have shared history with our very own University of Malaya. As you can see, I'm trying to become a lecturer. So we got the slides provided for you as well. Our two countries and these two institutions have gone their separate ways. But just as no one can, of course, deny our shared history, nothing can detract from the fact that we will have a shared common future as well. And most importantly, As our relationship, which has stood the test of time, continue to evolve, we will need to keep redefining the future that we envision together. No special relationship can be taken for granted. Like any relationship, for it to survive and grow, we need to put a lot of work into it. Indeed, we owe a great debt of gratitude to our predecessors, whose foresight and wise decisions have led us to where we are all here today. These relationships are built on mutual respect, trust, and appreciation of our shared values, culture, and historical connections. I have also been very fortunate to have received the wisdom and guidance of His Majesty the Sultan of Johor and His Royal Highness the Regent of Johor in managing this important relationship. As you can see, I look very handsome there. Prime Ministers Anwar Ibrahim and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong have also been unwavering with their support for our work here, including the improvement of ease of movement. Part of the reason Malaysia and Singapore's bilateral relationship thrived was because our leaders knew and understood each other. That is why I always make it a point to engage my counterparts here in Singapore. In fact, I try and learn from all kinds of leaders that I encounter. I never expected to be the Menteri Besar of Johor. I was shocked when I was first appointed. In fact, I am still in shock to this very day. And so my learning curve was very short and still very steep. And that's why I always seek to meet other leaders, to learn from them, to soak in their wisdom and learn from their experiences. It is also important that we ensure these links are forged at the business, media, and civil society level. All must understand why the Malaysia, Johor, and Singapore nexus is so vital. There must be a buy-in at all levels. And so that is where I also hope organizations like the NUSS will likewise contribute. Your alumni, both Malaysian and Singaporean, are doing great things across the world, and I hope this can extend to strengthening and bringing our bilateral relationships to the next level. Ladies and gentlemen, meanwhile, we are all aware that many exciting things are happening between Malaysia and Singapore, especially the anticipated Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone, also known as the JSSEZ. We are aware that Johor must be an active participant in this process, and beyond this, because the expectation of our rakyat is growing. That is why we will launch the Maju Johor 2030 initiative, which aims to ensure our state becomes developed by that year. Succinctly, it involves 6 key thrusts, namely governance, economic development, social safety net, facilities and basic needs, safety, cleanliness, environment, and also not forgetting our youth. That has served as an outline to the state's development in the past 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we have also tried to adopt a people-first approach in our governance. While we want to rapidly develop, we cannot ignore the basic necessities and the needs of the people. In short, we must ensure that there is inclusivity in the development. Through genuine and supportive investment partners, we must create high-value employment opportunities and elevate the household income of the local communities. While the investment figures in the past 18 months have been encouraging, where Johor consistently ranked in the top 5 destinations for foreign and direct investments in Malaysia, we must make sure that these investments align with our overall Maju Johor 2030. The spillover from these investments must be net positive for our local community. We must be able to address basic needs such as housing and public transportation. A serious look into managing our natural resources and food security is also extremely high on the agenda. Linked to this is the question of talent. We know that this is something that is of great concern to investors. It is true that our region is blessed with a highly skilled, dedicated workforce. I was informed that in Singapore alone, close to 1.5 million Malaysians are working here, with some 300,000 crossing the entry points on a daily basis. We must harness the power of a collective regional workforce as well as enhance it. We have created a Johor Talent Development Council as part of efforts to contribute to the JSSEZ industry manpower needs. The JTDC will, among other things, undertake a study of the effectiveness of existing programs and courses. We are working hand in hand with the federal government to make this a reality. As we have learned from other successful cities in Asia and in the West, having deep talent pool will allow innovation to be at the forefront. And this, in turn, will ensure that industries continue to thrive. I think it is good if Singapore also has skin in this game. What can Singapore's institutions help to ensure that it becomes a win-win situation for all? Ladies and gentlemen, we also understand that Malaysia and Johor will always be compared to beautiful Singapore. The relationship, if you allow me to be a bit more light-hearted tonight, is often like having an overachieving but annoying sibling. But seriously, the best outcomes for both our countries will be secured if Johor and Singapore strive to complement one another. Can we all agree to that? Our histories are intertwined, and so is our future. While we must acknowledge that we are at different stages of our economic development, we must strive to build a future that is sustainable and equitable. Singapore is the global financial capital of ASEAN and a major international hub for services. There is no denying that. For Johor to continue growing and meeting its development targets, it must build itself in the supply chain of these industries that are thriving in Singapore. We must forge a resilient business ecosystem that is complementary with each other. Where Johor lacks, Singapore fills in. Where Singapore lacks, Johor provides. There is no need for race to the bottom. We must pull each other to the pinnacle. That should be the basis of our enduring relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to show you how we are building on our past and current successes so we can capitalize on future economies. Here is a phrase terpan. 4 simple words. I hope I pronounced that correctly. 4 simple words, but to me powerful ones, loosely translated as special things, special efforts. It embodies the spirit that Shenzhen embraced some 40 years ago to transform itself from a sleepy fishing village bordering the mighty economic powerhouse Hong Kong to becoming a vibrant and thriving hub. Johor and Singapore, to me, can be like this. We can be an economic powerhouse together. There's no reason why we cannot do it together. As a Johorian, using football as an inspiration and example, there's no reason why we can't be like our JDT football team, which is now in a dominant era of Malaysian football. Are there any Johorians here? Oh, ada satu. By the way, we just beat Singapore 3-0. This is probably one of the few things we can beat you at. Ladies and gentlemen, when we first looked at the value proposition of a working model between Johor and Singapore, we found, unsurprisingly, that multinational corporations and thriving local businesses have been working on both sides of the border for decades now. In short, we have been and are stronger together. However, we also got a deep sense that our current achievements are nowhere near our actual combined potential. In discussing the JSSEZ, as well as in consultations with various stakeholders, our focus was on understanding long-standing problems and achieving common goals, including attracting new investors. One of the things that stood out was the need to boost the movement of people, goods, and services. In the last 100 years, we have developed 2 land entry points, the Causeway and the Second Link. Whereas, over the last 40 years since its inception, in contrast, there are now 4 land entry points between Shenzhen and Hong Kong. Having more options and identifying solutions, such as the RTS between Woodlands and JB, is one example of a way forward. We are taking a more holistic approach for the RTS. We'll need to plan to cater for the influx of economic activities when the RTS is completed by the year 2026. Johor has been invited also into the National Task Force on Traffic Congestion, chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister of Malaysia, where we are able to highlight our challenges and tap into solutions that are being developed in Kuala Lumpur. Second, we are taking a serious look at enhancing the business ecosystem, including ease of doing business. And third, attract investments to the region. We've heard grouses that policies and procedures have been inconsistent and tedious. We are taking the necessary steps to address this. We will soon open the first Invest Malaysia Facilitation Center outside Kuala Lumpur, in the Forest City. So Forest City will not just be a place for Singaporeans to play golf. It will have representatives from key agencies such as MIDA, Immigration, Customs, and also key state agencies such as Invest Johor, the Land Office, and 6 city councils that will be part of the JSSEZ. We will harmonize our processes and policies, give clear approval timelines, and promote transparency and accountability. Addressing these 2 long-standing pain points will be the key to unlocking the next wave of growth for not only Johor and Singapore, but will benefit the rest of the region. Ladies and gentlemen, the now 100-year-old Tambak Johor, or Causeway as mentioned by Mr. Tong, has come to represent the enduring, robust, and special relationship we have. It is an iconic physical landmark that many Malaysians and Singaporeans have a deep psychological attachment to, spanning generations. We often hear how crucial people-to-people ties are. Again, this is something we have a long history together. But again, it cannot subsist organically. For instance, I have been going down to the CIQ to help push and move things along. And I think for a lot of people, they think it's my second home. But more seriously, it also helps me understand what the Malaysians and Singaporeans who use it every day go through, and that has strengthened my resolve to see things improve as soon as possible. It is also a sign we must focus on the concrete, even though ideas have their time and place. Like the Causeway and the work of our founding fathers, we must work on building a new legacy for the next generation of Malaysians and Singaporeans, so they can thrive on the special relationships just as much as we have. Moving forward, we need to think big, beyond the confines of Johor and Singapore. Yes, we are going to do this together. We can also engage on other regions together. Malaysia is chair of ASEAN next year, and I believe our imagination is the only limitation on the new kinds of cooperation we can forge together. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I am sure we will be able to cover the points I've raised and anything omitted during the Q&A. I trust our efforts will also create new opportunities for the NUSS alumni present and future. Remember, the strength of Johor and Singapore relationship lies in its people. Sincerity is key. If we are sincere in helping lift one another, I believe we will all be winners in the long run. As a politician, I am an eternal optimist. I believe that Johor and Singapore will see better days ahead together. The Johor-Singapore relationship will only get stronger if we are willing to put in the effort to redefine it, keeping up with the times. Do not be afraid to push the reset button when we need to, every now and then. We need to constantly find new ideas, energy, and renewed focus to usher the dawn of a brighter future for both Johor and Singapore. I do hope that I can count on your support, ideas, and energy. Thank you all for your kind attention, and I am looking forward to your questions ahead. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dato On, for the insightful sharing. Please take your seat on the sofa for the Q&A session. To facilitate the session, let us welcome on stage our moderator for this evening, Mr. Soh Yi, NUSS Management Committee member and chairperson of the Intellectual Pursuit Subcommittee. Before I hand the mic over to the floor, please do share your name in full and where you are from. So for example, if you are an NUSS member or a guest of NUSS, before you ask your question. Let us start the Q&A session, and we welcome everyone to come forward to the mic to ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato, for the frank and insightful sharing. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Tonight, we are very privileged to have with us Yang Amat Berhormat Dato On Hafiz Ghazi, the Menteri Besar of Johor, to join us in this exclusive dialogue with our NUSS members. And before the audience asks the tough questions, like MB mentioned earlier, I will start with some easy ones. And I'm sure our audience here wants to learn more about Dato as an individual, as a leader. So perhaps I'll start with some of the easy questions. And we know, Dato, you come from an illustrious family. Your great-great-grandfather was the first Menteri Besar of Johor. Your great-grandfather was also Menteri Besar of Johor, founded UMNO. Your grandfather was Prime Minister of Malaysia, PM Hussein On. And many of your relatives are also in politics. So what was it like growing in that sort of environment, in a sort of household where everyone's a politician? Was it stressful? And, was there any pressure for you to, join politics from young and carry on the family legacy? You mentioned about legacy earlier.
Thank you, Ita. I think I had a normal childhood, I suppose. And I think my parents were very conscious to ensure that my siblings and I were grounded. And we were always reminded that, there's this Malay proverb that says, it's resmi padi. I don't know how strong your Malay is, Yuta. Sedikit. It says, semakin berisi, semakin tunduk. That means, if you are in that privileged position, humility is very important. And that was something that was always reminded. And at the same time, I think I was privileged enough to join the Royal Military College at a very early age.
The fan club is here.
I think the OPs can attest that, in the boarding school, we mix with everyone. Folks from Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan and Terengganu, right up to those who grew up in the modern cities like Kuala Lumpur and Penang. So there was a very good mix. And I think that really helped build me as an individual. Okay.
So maybe what was your childhood ambition? Was it to be a politician, or if you had not become a politician, what would you have been on hindsight?
Quite frankly, I wanted to become a pilot. But obviously, I think I had, based on my height, I did not quite fit the bill. But to answer your question, I think I had a very close relationship with my late grandfather, and I idolized him. I saw him as a true statesman, and I got closer to him when he was retired. He spent a lot of time reading, but during weekends, whenever I had time, he would share with me his political experiences. And just before he passed away, he called me up from San Francisco just before entering the operating theater. And, over the phone, I was concerned. But he did say, Hafiz, I do want you to follow in my footsteps, serve the people. So I was 12 at that point. It didn't click, but I think somehow it was somewhere, it was ingrained in me somehow.
Has your grandfather influenced you in terms of your worldview, in terms of politics, and in terms of your leadership style?
I do think so, because I remember I wrote a quote. I wrote a quote that was on the wall of his room every time I visited him. He went to military school, so this quote was actually on the wall of the military school where he studied in India. Like for the OPs, the RMC boys, our slogan is serve to lead. For him, there's this quote that I want to share with everyone. It states, the safety, honor, welfare of the men under your command come first, always and every time. Your own safety, comfort, and welfare come last, always and every time. So I think, growing up with that background, I think for me, it's always been about to be in service to other people.
That's very inspiring. So maybe on that note, we can open the Q&A to the floor. And perhaps because I anticipate there's going to be lots of questions from the audience, I strongly urge those who have questions that wants to be answered, please step forward early. We can start off with this gentleman on the left.
Thank you, Chair. Dato, thank you for your presentation. I'm Faisal Yahya from NUSS Society. Some of my questions are, you mentioned that Johor wants to be the Shenzhen of the East. We've heard that several times. But bearing in mind that Shenzhen is part of China, and what we're talking about is Johor being a separate country. There are two separate countries that we're talking about in terms of this Shenzhen context. How would you resolve that kind of issues in terms of, one, the movement of goods between the two countries, which have been an issue that's raised by companies that have got operations in Singapore companies having operations in Johor, for example, in Iskandar, Malaysia. And two, essentially, is the movement of people where, for example, in the healthcare sector, these are like protected professional services in Malaysia, for example, and Singapore, vice versa. So, to tap into sectors like healthcare development, where you might want to have, the growth of healthcare services. The restrictions of providing services among the professionals in both countries might be an issue. And my third question, a short one, is, do you think some of these issues will be resolved at the leaders' retreat come December, when you're about to sign the agreement for the SEZ, please? Thank you.
In regards to the question posed by Cik Faisal, three things: movement of goods, movement of people, and also the leaders' retreat. Now, first of all, in terms of the history of Shenzhen, they started from a different base. I think Johor is starting from a different base. So that is why I think we're quite optimistic in terms of what can be done in the next few years. And I was just sharing with some friends just now in the waiting room that if this special economic zone was brought up 10 years ago, I don't think the Malaysian and Singapore government would be ready. But somehow the stars have aligned now. And those issues, Cik Faisal, that you just mentioned, are pain points or issues that are being discussed thoroughly in our workshops. So both the Malaysian government and the Singaporean government have been working hand in hand to address these issues, whether it's movement of goods, people and services, and also in terms of talent. So we are addressing it, and you are right. These things will be announced in the leaders' retreat on the 8th of December. As far as I'm concerned, there are no delays. The timing for both Prime Minister of Singapore and Malaysia has been set. So I'm very mindful not to be sharing too much details because I was told that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Malaysia is here. Can you please raise your hand? Okay, thank you.
So akan datang.
Okay.
Now moving on to this RMC alumnus.
Berhormat, Dato Ong, thank you very much for acknowledging your alma mater, the Royal Military College. When we were growing up in Malaysia, and I have been here in Singapore for 40 years, 45 years. But that was the period when it was very traumatic between the two countries. Then the earlier generations had this trauma of the separation. So going forward now, as you said, the stars are aligning now. You know, in the military college, we will live together of different races and religions, and we gel together, you know. And so we had expectations of playing leadership roles, whether we are in Malaysia or Singapore, no? And going forward now, based on your own experience, would you also say that between two countries, as you go forward in the future, that the leadership ingredients that you have identified that was pushed forward in the military college, was the kind of things that could have gelled different races and people of different religions and cultures, together? Because I remember by the time when I came 45 years ago, the KSU or the chief secretaries then, the equivalent here is the permanent secretary in Singapore, there were 9 from the military college, and we had a lot of ambitions of playing a leadership role in the country and forging within the region this kind of a prominent position. Would you, going forward now, say based on your experiences in the military college, would be able to also predict how best the two countries can work together?
Dato, your experience in RMC?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we have to invest in the relationship. It takes effort and time. And I think on the Malaysian side, on the Johorian side, we are taking these steps, with the support of Singapore. And that's why, as I said earlier in my speech, we have a by-election going on in Johor at the moment. But despite being busy back home, I think that this relationship is also very important. And I think Johor and Singapore, we have a very rich history together. We're just separated by the causeway. I'm sure a lot of you here have relatives back in Johor, and we have a lot of relatives here in Singapore. So, as I said, we're like siblings, and I think we need to start working hand in hand. But, obviously you guys are the annoying sibling. It's work in progress, but I'm very hopeful. Because, as you said, back in school, we were colorblind. Malay, Chinese, Indian, we played sports together, we studied together, the ragging was together, the bullying was together. So, but it bonded us. So I think this Johor-Singapore Special Economic Zone is one mechanism to bond us even tighter. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. We take the question from Manu, our member.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, Dato, everyone. Dato, I think I share your optimism. Basically, I think it's, in a nutshell, you could say Singapore and Johor, of course, if we work together, there's tremendous potential because Singapore, basically a developed place with very dense, expensive, Johor, larger landmass, a lot of workers available, etc. All the fundamentals are there. But when I told my friends, recent times the RTS came up, the idea of the RTS and so on, and whether companies would invest in Johor, whether Singaporeans will shift over there, buy apartments and so on, houses. Certain key questions came up. I think in summary, I would say that they center around two things. One is politics, the politics in Malaysia, in Johor, but of course in Malaysia in general. So the state and national politics, whether the political will remain consistent or will the politics change, and then it affects the policies in turn. So it's politics and policies. If the politics change, then the policies change. We have seen rules for companies, ownership of land, ownership of individual property, etc. change over time. And there are different cycles. I mean, I'm sure you remember we had the Golden Triangle concept, which included Johor, Batam, Singapore, and after some time kind of fizzled out. So there's always that concern, is like, oh, is this just round three? Round three meaning round one, round two, round three. And again, it will fizzle out because governments might, not necessarily state government, it could be your national government changing rules, changing policies due to pressure from different groups and so on and so forth, So I think it's a difficult question. I don't expect that you would be having a clear-cut answer, but I think what I'm looking for and what my friends are looking for is like, is it going to be different this time? Is it going to last? And so will the policies come into place that we are proposing and the execution of it? So I think at the end of it, that is the question. Will they be executed and will we be consistent? If we keep flip-flopping, then we go back to square one and things cool off. So your thoughts, I mean, but to be fair to you, I don't think you can give any ironclad guarantee, but just to hear your thoughts, Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Obviously, the Malaysian politics is much more colorful than what you have here. But as it stands, in Johor at least, we have 40 out of 56 seats, state seats. We have more than 2/3. So I think at the state level, we have stability. And for most Johorians, we are also aligned to the royal household of Johor. We've got good ties with them, and we work hand in hand. And just to share with you, Mr.
Manu,
yeah,
NUSS. Yeah.
It so happens our Sultan of Johor is currently the Yang di-Pertuan Agong of Malaysia. So naturally, a lot of asks, or requests are usually agreed. They will entertain us. I was joking. Can I share another joke? So I joke with my staff, before YDPA, before the Sultan became the Agong, if I call any minister in KL, probably take a week or two for them to reply or return my calls. These days, I don't even have to call anymore. I just have to look at my phone and they will call me. That's a joke, okay? So I'm just saying things are a bit different. I can't give you any assurance, what what the future holds in the next 5 to 10 years. But I can tell you this, at least for the next 5 years, with the Sultan of Johor, helming the country at the moment, they will look after the interests of Johor. And secondly, that is why there is an agreement that will be signed by both countries. So regardless of what happens in terms of changes in the government, I think it will tie both governments not to do any decisions that will damage the economies of both countries. I think this JSEZ agreement that will be signed by Prime Minister Singapore and Malaysia will bind us in the long run. I hope that answers this question.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. The next question.
Good evening. Assalamualaikum. Yang berhormat Dato On. My name is Fazlur Rahman bin Kamsani. I'm basically an alumni of NUS, graduated in 1993. I'm also currently serving as a board member of the Middle East Institute of NUS. But professionally, Dato, I'm with Maybank Islamic Global Banking. So there's a lot of efforts being done, I think as you mentioned, on SEZ on the economic front. But interestingly, you mentioned about JDT, because as a footballer, I could relate to it and how with TMJ has actually developed JDT to be the icon of Malaysian football. So coming from Johor, and I think as you also mentioned that now the Sultan is the Agong. So the stars are aligning. On the people to people, I'm just hoping that whether using the JDT as an example of how we have spread the influence to the rest of Malaysia, whether with this partnership in Singapore and Johor, that could actually also lead to a better appreciation on the people to people that, notwithstanding how Singapore was kicked out of Malaysia, put that aside, that's history. We being the younger, I'm not younger, I'm young senior actually. But I think moving forward, I think there's a lot of hope that can be done beyond the economics. Yes, the economics being done, SEZ being done, RTS being done, but on a people to people, can Johor play that part to spread the beacon of hope to the rest of Malaysia that Singapore is not a threat, Singapore is a partner, that we can actually grow together. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very interesting opinion and question. You're very right to say that TMJ has set a very high benchmark when it comes to football. And that is not just for football. For the government servants and the people of Johor, we see that kind of level of excellence. We want to continue to strive to achieve those kind of results in everything that we do. And you are right. Personally, as a young chief minister, people have been saying Johor has so much potential. Johor has so much potential. Have you all heard of that before?
Yes.
I've heard of that since I was a little kid. And I'm asking myself, when is that going to be a reality? And now that I'm in this position, I think it is my responsibility to ensure that we can rise to the occasion. And it's not just about infrastructure. It's not just about the economy. You're right to say it's also about the people. The mentality, the education, these are important elements, and Johor does want to lead the way. We do. As a state, we do want to be a shining example for the rest of the states. We've got the slogan, Malaysia boleh, Johor boleh. And I think we have a good friend. We have a good neighbor. We have a good relationship, as I said. And I think with the help of Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, this can be a reality soon. Thank you.
Thank you. take the next question.
Good evening, Yang Berhormat Dato On. My name is Raymond Tan. I'm 55. I came here when I was 20 years old. I'm still Malaysian because I applied for citizenship here in 2021 during COVID, and it took too long. And, okay, I'm 55, I just collected my CPF money. I took it out because they changed the rules and I don't get 4% interest anymore. That's one reason. So at 55, I'm recalibrating. As a Malaysian, I'm recalibrating. I came here when I was 20 years old. At 55, I not only have 4 children who are Singaporeans, I have 4 degrees from NUS.
4 degrees?
Yeah, I have 4 degrees from NUS, 2 bachelors and 2 masters. In fact, I'm not the only one here. I have my friend Victor Ho, Malaysian, from the same school, also 4 degrees.
Well, you
And
guys
he's
really
still
like
Malaysian.
studying, huh?
He's still Malaysian. What I'm alluding to now, I'm getting to my real point now. Now at 55, Victor is 54. And we are both from the same school, LaSalle PJ. And the former Law Society President Gregory Vijayendran was also an alumni of LaSalle PJ. There are a lot of talented Malaysians who are in Singapore. And there's this discussion and discourse in the media all the time about Malaysia trying to attract back the talented professionals or the talented high caliber people who have left the country to work abroad. Now, it's very interesting. I'm recalibrating at 55 years old because I'm an architect by training. I see things without boundaries. There are OB markers. I'm a golfer, there are OB markers, but there are no real boundaries because our imagination is very vivid. Now, between Singapore and Johor, as an architect, I see Singapore highly developed, population 5.5 million. Johor population 4 million. Racial fabric, similar. A lot of Malaysians cross over, and there are Malaysians here who want to cross over to Johor now. We want to live in Johor. We want to contribute in Johor. The biggest separation is not the bridge. It's not the 2-hour jam. The biggest separation, as far as I'm concerned, is going there to earn the ringgit. Because we are service providers, and the people who engage us are not able to pay us. The currency disparity is too large. So that is the biggest issue that needs to be discussed between Singapore and Johor. For things to work, a lot of Malaysians here want to go to Johor. A lot of Malaysians want to come to Singapore. A lot of Singapore-based Malaysians want to go to Johor because it's a big playground there. I see things as playground. There are many playgrounds around. Where do I want to play? I still have 15 more years of economic life. It's very interesting for me now because there's nowhere in the world, I believe there's nowhere in the world where I cross a bridge and my money multiplies by 3.4. That's a fact, okay? I don't want to say that it's cheap. It's a very interesting situation for both sides. And let's focus, just focus on Johor along the water edge. The perimeter is really an asset, the Straits of Johor. Now, towards Pasir Gudang, nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to go to Pasir Gudang. Why? Because it's industrial. Yeah, the journey is not exciting. But how do you change that? Between Penang and mainland, you have 2 bridges. What has Penang got to offer to the mainland? You have 2 bridges. What is stopping us from a 3rd bridge that links Pasir Gudang to Changi? It unlocks value of both sides. Buy a third bridge. This is my observation. This is what I have to offer. It's not a question.
So maybe we can keep your question a bit short so that others have a chance.
Okay.
To ask a
Now the question I have is how do you make me want to go and work in Johor? I want to go and live in Johor. I want to go and live in Johor. I can spend 4 days here and 3 days there, and then sometimes 4 days there and 3 days here. So how do you want me and my fellow Malaysian high caliber friends to want to go there and live there and work there?
So
The
Dato,
biggest-
the pitch is
The
is
biggest
for you to pitch
hurdle
back to
is
him.
the currency difference.
Okay,
That
so
is-
maybe we hear
Thank you.
Dato's reply.
Oh yeah, it took so long.
No worries. Very interesting point of view. I think salary is a very important component for one to decide where to work. Earning a living for yourself and your family. Now, as we all know, a lot of Malaysians go to Singapore earning 2,000 ringgit a month, but it's tax-free. So when they come back to Malaysia, their purchasing power is a lot higher. So that's about 7,200 ringgit. Now, with the SEZ, there's a lot of hype now, and a lot of AI companies are coming to Johor. And there was one company where we helped from scratch. They managed to build their factory within 1 year. 1 year. And that was record-breaking time. They got all the approvals, they got all the licenses, and they started operating within 1 year. And most of the people that they employed were Malaysians. And I asked, on average, how much are you paying your staff? About 4,000 ringgit. For a fresh grad, for a Malaysian, that's quite reasonable. But then I asked the same question, you have your setup in Singapore for the same work that they do, how much would you pay in Singapore? Or it's dollar to dollar, 4,000 Sing. So, then I had to put on my charm and negotiation skills. Because at the end of the day, as I said, it's always about the people. And I just think it's not fair, that for the same amount of work, they are paid a different salary scheme. So I negotiated with them whether they could, increase the salaries offered to the Malaysians. And they said it was something that they were willing to consider. Because, whether you like it or not, it is 70% cheaper to do business in Johor compared to Singapore, and 30% cheaper to do business in Johor compared to Kuala Lumpur. So the cost of doing business is still a lot cheaper if you do it in Johor. So my only ask, for investors, you must take into account what you're offering to the employees that you're taking on board. That should address the issue of, ensuring that people will find it attractive to work in Johor. But I do want to share at the same time. We've got some good international schools in Johor. Raffles, I mentioned earlier, Marlborough College, just to name a few. Some good universities as well in Madini. And the waiting lists for these international schools have gone through the roof. More Singaporeans are now willing to stay and send their children to school in Johor, and then they work in Singapore. So they commute every day. So believe it or not, it's already happening. So you don't have to stay in Pasir Gudang. There's a lot of other places that you can stay in JB, in Medini, in Iskandar Putri. I think it's quite nicely developed in that area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Maybe you have this gentleman.
Good evening, Dato On, and welcome to Singapore. My name is Sas, and I'm just a guest of our NUSS member. I saw your slides, wonderful presentation, big ideas. Many of them are flying high up in the sky, kind of ideas, very good. But here's my question as a Singaporean or as a potential investor. Right? The last couple of months, a number of Singaporeans and Singapore drivers, including some of those people going to international schools, for example, we are having difficulty registering our vehicles to enter Johor.
It's the inevitable question.
So in my current company, my boss, myself, and a German gentleman, we are all having difficulty. We're not sure when is the registration going to come in place, how smooth is the transfer going to be, and it's such a painful process. So we ask ourselves, if just registering your vehicle is so painful, what more about setting up in a special economic zones or putting a factory down there and so on? I'm telling you, getting to a special economic zone itself is proving to be painful, sir. I would just like to see a response, and I know it could be a federal thing, but how would you solve this problem going forward? I've not come across a single Singaporean today who have said, wow, that's an easy process. Not a single person. Sorry, what's... Sorry?
Yeah, so as Yita mentioned just now, this was the inevitable question for tonight. But it's something that I will address personally. You have my word. Okay. Because at the end of the day, I've gone to the CIQ more than 100 times. And quite frankly, my priority was always about the Johorians first. Mainly because it affects 300,000 people. Malaysians every day. They used to wake up at 4 a.m. just to get to work by 8 a.m. These days, with the QR codes, with the facial recognition being tested, they can still wake up at 6 and still arrive by 8. So we are saving on average 2 to 3 hours a day for the fellow Malaysians. And in terms of this ease of movement for the Singaporeans to come into Johor, personally, I've not done anything yet. But you have my word. Your complaint tonight is something that I take seriously, and I will address it as soon as I get back to Johor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dato.
Hi, my name is George Huang. I've got a question, basically with regards to how the state governments work, sort of lobby each other so that they can lobby the federal government. Because simply, when taking off from the first speaker and many other people here, talking about freedom of movement of goods and services, we do have the ASEAN Common Economic Market. And Johor definitely have more interest than some of the other states in terms of the freedom. So would probably Perlis with Thailand. So my question on a broader scale is, how do you really work? And on a narrow scale, when you have common interest, where the border states have common interest, how do you lobby the federal government to your benefit?
Basically, do states in Malaysia work together to lobby the federal government when interests are aligned?
Thank you.
I think in terms of lobbying together, I think all states have their own interests. And I think for Johor it's a bit different, because I think the interest is now on Johor. You know what I mean? Because, as I said, I think at the national level, they are looking at a new growth engine, new economic growth engine, and that happens to be Johor. So I think, as I said, it's now a lot easier for us to engage the leaders at Putrajaya in terms of what we want and what we need. And I think this Friday, you will see some very, very positive announcements that will be made by the Minister of Finance too, in regards to the Special Financial Zone. I've gone through the details. I'm quite astonished in terms of what they're willing to incentivize when it comes to the Special Financial Zone in Forest City. So, as I mentioned, there's somebody from MOFA today, so I cannot share with you all the details, but I think you'll be amazed to see what they'll be announcing on Friday in regards to the Special Financial Zone. So I think, in terms of lobbying, it's not too difficult these days for Johor.
So again, akan datang, we look forward to Friday. And Edward?
Yang Amat Berhormat, we spoke earlier, and I did tell you that someone or another was going to ask about the VEP. Just for the record, I registered and I got my VEP before all the craziness started, and it was a 7-day process. So I think to take heart, I think what's happening is because there's a sudden rush. Unfortunately, those Singaporeans who wanted to go to Malaysia often were not kiasu enough and did not register the VEP when the going was easy. I'm going to start with an easy question. PM6 and the then PM Lee Hsien Loong, PM6 of Malaysia and PM Lee Hsien Loong, actually they were in talks, and I thought they almost agreed for a third bridge that one of another speaker from the floor spoke about. Is that still in the works? And the more difficult question is, I see a lot of promise in what you're saying, the SEZ and the SFZ, and how Johor can be the Shenzhen of Malaysia. Just remember that if Johor is the Shenzhen of Malaysia, that means that Singapore will be playing the role of what Hong Kong was when it was part of the UK. The only thing is, my question is, that will probably help Johor leaps and bounds ahead of the other states. And do you think you'll be pressured to slow down by the envy of the other states?
Pressure to slow down, the last part.
Pressure to slow down due to the envy of the other states.
So, in terms of connectivity, we are at the working level looking at other modes of transportation as well. So we're looking at the possible ferry service between Iskandar Puteri and Tuas. But coming to the third bridge, I think we want to see the success of the RTS first. Because once the RTS is ready by the year 2026 and should be running by the 1st of Jan 2027, at the peak of it, there will be 10,000 people per hour. So it can take a big load. So we want to make sure that becomes a success first. I think we'll take it step by step, but I think connectivity will always be something that is close to both Johor and Singapore's hearts. Yeah, so we'll continue to revisit that. But at the moment, there are no plans just yet. I hope that answers the first question. And the second question was on the envy of other chief ministers, other states. I think they've got their own states to run. I'm focused on developing Johor, and I'm going to make sure it happens.
Thank you, Dato. So as we are running out of time, and this usually happens, everyone wants to rush to ask questions at the end. So we'll take all the 4 questions together from these 4 gentlemen.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we'll go first.
Good evening, Dato, again, and thank you for your patience in answering all our questions. I still want to go back and bug you a little bit on the VEP again.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
The VEP tag, it's an RFID tag, and it's actually fixed external to the vehicle on the headlight. While it's a very easy and simple technology to use, it's still not idiot-proof or foolproof in that sense. If somebody were to tamper with it or it can't be used in Malaysia. So I think it will cause severe constraints on people wanting to use it from Singapore. I mean, it's not a device that is inside your car. It is external to your car, and there are limitations of how much you can protect with what you have today. So it's some feedback that has to be taken back and thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Jeffrey?
And Dato, I'll get to my questions since you're short of time. You mentioned earlier on at the beginning of your talk about Hong Kong and Shenzhen, right? I mean, to me, that's also a cautionary tale. You know, in 2017, 2018, the GDP of Shenzhen surpassed Hong Kong, right? So I think as a Singaporean, born and bred Singaporean, my concern is that, yes, work together, the annoying, sibling, as you call it. But
there was a joke.
Yeah. No, it's true, yeah. But annoying sibling is also a competitive sibling, right? We are basically from different countries, right? So I think my concern here, and I think that there will be many other Singaporeans concerned, in the event, if we do this, Singaporeans got to feel comfortable that it doesn't end up in the same case as Hong Kong, right? Which is really now behind Shenzhen. The story goes that when in the 80s and all that, people were running from Shenzhen to work in Hong Kong. In the end, we got it the other way around now, right? So what form of, I won't say guarantees, right? But I think our Singapore leaders are also a smart group. They also make sure that this doesn't happen. But on your end, how do you see us collaborating without this happening and allaying the phrase of Singaporean?
Obviously, this is not a zero-sum game. I think, there's opportunities for everyone. And quite frankly, as a Chief Minister of Johor, I have no ambitions to beat Singapore when it comes to economic growth or the GDP and all that. I just want a better Johor. And I think there's opportunities for everyone. So I think even for Singaporeans, there's an opportunity for you to invest and do business in Johor, because it's not the same, the spirit, when I say we want to be the next Shenzhen, we want the spirit of Shenzhen. Tersetepan. That is what I'm focusing on. We need to do things the extraordinary way in order to achieve extraordinary results. And I think the growth, the economy of Singapore will grow even further if you work and collaborate with Johor. When Shenzhen developed, they didn't shake hands with Hong Kong. They did it on their own. There was no collaboration. This is different. This is even better than Shenzhen.
Maybe this gentleman.
Good evening, Dato Ong. Okay, I'm James Chia, guest of NUSS. My friend brought me here. Okay, I'm a Singaporean. Okay, but I'm running companies. I have companies in Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia. I stayed in Johor for close to 20 years. 20 years. I used to stay in Setia Tropica, and now I'm living in RNF, Princess Cove, just overlooking at the causeway.
Are you still staying there?
Yeah. I'm still staying in Johor, so every week I will stay a couple of days, maybe from Thursday to Sunday. But not only staying there, but also to operate my business in Malaysia. And this year, my children play for Singapore national ice hockey team. This year we won the Johor Summer Cup. You understand that?
Was that the question?
Okay, no. Okay, I know there are many new incentives coming in, okay, to promote the economic zone, and also something happening maybe this Friday for the Forest City, you know. But when I started to operate business in Malaysia, because I'm a foreigner, I own more than 50% of the company share. It's not a level playing field against the local. So it becomes very, very hard for me to operate, okay, on top of the SST and the duty. And the year that when you introduced the GST, actually I was very happy, because the field become level playing field. So I did a lot of business during that, I think 2 or 3 years period where you have GST. And after that, you changed to SST. But fortunately, COVID hit. Fortunately, sorry. Because as a Singaporean, at first it's 2 weeks, then become 2 months that we cannot enter Malaysia. But in the end, the whole thing dragged until, I think, around 2 years. So when COVID hit, and at the time, GST was removed, and it's only SST, I have to retreat all my business back to Singapore. Okay, I have to retreat everything back to Singapore. And today, the system is still SST and duty. And on top of that, as a foreigner, our tax are heavy. And for example, in the early years when I bought a factory in Setia Business Park too, and that is at Dato Ong. So today, I just Google Wikipedia. Now I know what was the origin of Dato Ong. That's your great-great-grandfather, right? So now I know the history behind that road. And that road is to the Dato Ong Jasco, and then go into Setia Business Park too. As a foreigner, when you're going to buy the factory, we have to register a company before we can buy. But the local can just buy with their ID. And not only that, the taxation for foreigner, even if we draw salary, are higher. It cannot let us be more competitive to operate business. That's why, even though I have these 3 companies, my main operation is still in Singapore, to do the business with Malaysian.
Do you have any suggestions, or?
My suggestion is this. Singapore, the business is level playing field. Any foreigner come to Singapore, they play by the same rules, same taxation, everything the same. But when we enter to Malaysia, we are not on the same level playing field. So how can we do more? No, we are always worried to do more. Because suddenly you have something new, and then I got to react, you know. And now something going on is like something online invoicing, you know. I have to do everything on online invoicing. So there are many things coming in, and we take difficulty to digest, to adapt, and to perform.
Okay, I think we can take it as that. If you want to respond?
Yeah, I think from the Malaysian side, from the Johor side, we take that feedback seriously. And I think that's why I think the Special Economic Zone can be a testing ground for this new kind of suggestions. And that is why we are the only state in the country that will have this Invest Malaysia Facilitation Center, IMFC. So that would be a one-stop center where investors will have to go, but you will not have to deal with everyone. We're setting up an account manager to look after the investors. So this is something new that we are providing, but that feedback in terms of making a equal level playing field is something that I will bring up to the ministries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the last question.
Good evening, Dr. Ong. My name is Charlie, and I'm a NUSS member. I have a question for you. I recall that during the last event I attended, ASEAN conference, you mentioned taking bold move. So when I was a kid, I used to
Sorry, I mentioned what?
Taking bold move to reform Johor and do the special economic zones. The special economic zone. So my question to you is, when I was a kid, I used to take the bump boat from Changi jetty to Sabana Cove, Sungai Ringgit for seafood and fun. And then in the 80s, I think they tried to develop the Desaru to have another big parks and all that, right? So my question to you is, recently I visited Desaru for holiday and I went through, I saw Pengarang, and it's a huge chemical area. So my question to you is, what is your plan for Pengarang? Is it going to be part of the Johor-Singapore Economic Free Zone? Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of zoning, in terms of area that we are suggesting and proposing to both Singapore and the Malaysian government, it will cover the district of JB, Kulai, Pontian, and also Pengerang. That's the whole area that we're looking at. So, to answer your question, yes, Pengerang will be part of the Special Economic Zone. And we have started investing already in terms of infrastructure. We are widening the highways. So from JB right up to Desaru, the highway will be widened. And from Kulai right up to Aitam, the highway will also be widened. Yeah, because we don't want you to go too far, you know, just stay in Johor.
I think as a low-hanging fruit, instead of building the third causeway, maybe in 10 or 20 years' time, maybe you could just have a ferry service that allow cars to go into Pengarang.
Sorry? Yeah, ferry. We got ferry services from Singapore right up
not
to
with
Desaru.
cars. Last night I used to be able to drive the cars in car ferries, just like in Europe and other countries. Yeah, that's a bold move.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. So maybe we invite MB to say a few concluding remarks.
Once again, I would like to really appreciate and acknowledge NUSS for inviting me tonight. And I feel so privileged, you know, to be able to speak to all of you tonight. And I hope to welcome all of you to Johor soon, you know, just to visit. And we have Invest Johor that has been corporatized. That's another bold move that the state of Johor has done to ensure we have the efficiency to cater to your needs. But nevertheless, once again, thank you all very much. You've been a wonderful crowd. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. I'll just say a couple of words as well. Just now, Dato, you mentioned about our relationships as siblings, and we are the annoying one. So I thought, my little hope, and for the future really is, as Asians, I think we're all very conservative in showing love and affection. But I hope that this sibling relationship, within the sibling relationship, we can both sayang each other more, show each other more love, and I think that will spell, a very successful and prosperous future for both Johor, Singapore, and Malaysia. And on this note, just now, MB, you shared 4 Chinese words with us. We also have 4 Chinese words for you. We wish you 步步高升, which means may you continue to scale new heights in your political career. And one day when you are Prime Minister, we hope you will come back and deliver the future NUSS lecture. And we wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato On and Mr. Soh for the most engaging Q&A session. May we now invite Mr. Tong, NUSS President, and Mr. Nakusha Abdul Kadir, NUSS Vice President, to present a token of appreciation to Dato On, please. Thank you, Dato On, Mr. Tong, Mr. Nakusha, and Mr. Soh. May we invite you to return to your seats? Ladies and gentlemen, let's give another round of applause to the speakers for the enriching session and not forgetting all the questions that were fielded. So thank you all for attending today's lecture, and we look forward to seeing you at other NUSS events. Do keep a lookout on our website, social media, and e-blast for such announcements. Wishing you a great night ahead. Thank you.